And there's a number of different things that we could talk about with fundamentals. This is a kind of a broad topic, and I definitely think fundamentals are really important. There's a lot of ways you could kind of break down fundamentals, but I would say that one thing that does happen quite often is you get a student who comes in and maybe because of curiosity or anxiety, their mind is racing and they're full of questions. And we always learn, like, the white belt, this is the mind of the baby. You're just looking around and you just want to take it all in, and you don't ask too many questions. You just say yes, sir, and you try to figure it out by doing, and sometimes you get these students that they're very curious, or maybe they have some anxiety, so they want to like think it all the way through and know every little detail before they even throw it the first time. And they think about it so much that they lock themselves up and they can't even figure out like what goes first, and likewise, sometimes you get those instructors that do the same thing, where you get the newbie instructor who's like, okay, this is wrong, 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 and we're just like, okay, where do I begin? Like, where do I begin to fix? And exactly. What I was kind of hearing from you kind of goes into a different way you can kind of look at fundamentals, which is if you start at the end, you cannot understand the beginning. And one of the problems we have as humans is we just always want to get to the end. And so, like, if we take weightlifting, for example, like a lot of guys tend not to be as good at like rock climbing as women, because we're so strong that we can just, like, if I'm picking up a big heavy weight, I can just go with all my strength, go and just push it all the way up, right? After my lights. But if I do that, I forget all of this biomechanics all the way up, which is so important. And so actually doing things very slowly can be incredibly helpful for learning everything that's happening between here and here. And it's like, one thing I see a lot is you'll get martial artists who come in and they can throw a really strong kick, or a really strong punch, but they never land it. And they're like, why do I never land this kick? And it's because you have terrible footwork. All the positioning that goes in up until the point where you throw the kick is missing. So you're just, you will never land. And it's like, if you go to like that arm bar, right? It's all the little positioning that happens before, on the way up to the arm bar. The arm bar itself, like, I don't even fully extend for an arm bar, because the most important thing for the arm bar is all the little locking up, like on the way up to when you get there. And like, when it's all like that, it's over. I mean, all you gotta do is just a little bit like that and it's done. But if all of this is wrong, that's when you go, oh, I can't get it to work. It's like, so yeah.
Yeah, and I have advanced students that that do the same thing still, but it's a constant thing. We're humans, and sometimes we want to just get to the point. I'm actually a huge fan of just getting right to the point. But yeah, and one of the things I bring up about fundamentals is the idea that sometimes if you just go over fundamentals, it can be very boring, very tedious, and so really I try not to spend too much time on it. But that's why at the end of class, if we do usually if I'm doing a class, for example, I'll do I tell my students, if I show you a lot of techniques in class, it's because I don't want you to care. I don't want you to worry about the technique. I'm teaching you all these other things, and I want you to pay attention to what you're doing in between the techniques, from the beginning of the movement until the end of the movement. I want you to pay attention to that. I don't want you to pay attention to how the wrist is or how the arm is or whatever. I want you to pay attention to everything else that gets you to that point. If you can't get to work and punch in, you're not going to work, right? So you have to get to work and punch in, and then the paycheck is getting that submission. The paycheck is getting the throw off. The paycheck is landing your punch, right? Or landing a good punch, if you will. So yeah, that's one of the main things that I focus on. But telling new students, hey, focus on your fundamentals, because if you don't know your ABCs, you're not going to be able to spell. If you don't know your addition and subtraction, you're not going to be able to do your algebra. So do all that stuff, and you're going to get really good really quick if you really focus on it, especially.
Yeah, Jesse was telling me you went to Japan and trained over there a little bit.
Yeah, I mean, I like to say I went to Japan and trained, but I did. But it was a 2-week trip with my wife, back in 18, and I was able to visit a couple dojos out there, just experience their culture and what they do, and how much different it is, and other styles, stuff like that.
The
So
reason why I bring it up is because I spent many years training in Korea, and if you train in Japan, it's probably a similar culture in the sense that they focus a lot on the fundamentals, to the point like an American would probably just start break down and crying because they're so bored because they did that same thing so many times. Like in Taekwondo, I trained in Taekwondo my whole life, and then I go to Korea to get like really top tier training, and they just sit me over in the corner and they say, I want you to bounce up and down for an hour. And I'm like, and then I'm like, my leg, I can't even walk anymore. I can't even walk, and they're like, okay, come back tomorrow. And I'm like, it's straight out of like Karate Kid. Like that's why Karate Kid is so awesome, is because that's really what like old school Asian teaching is like. And so and then the next day I come in and I'm expecting to learn something else, and they say, nope, you're gonna bounce. And I do that for 6 months. You know what I mean? Like that's the kind of insanity. Or when I studied judo, the Korean pronunciation of judo, I was same throw for like 3 months, just one throw. I was going out of my mind, but I learned that throw so well, you know what I mean? And let's be honest, you don't need that many techniques. You need a few techniques, very, very proficient. That's how you get very good at actually sparring.
Right. Quality over quantity.
And a lot of beginners make that mistake. They're like, oh, I want all these cool submissions and I want all these cool kicks and stuff. It's like, you don't need it. You need a few basic submissions done very, very well, where there's no room of escape, and a very simple but concise game plan. Because combat is incredibly complex. And if your strategy is complex, it gets too lost sometimes. So,
Yeah. That's where I learned about what we call the plateau, and it's usually in the middle of training, like when you become like a middle belt rank or whatever, however you're progressing, you start getting way more techniques than you know what to do with, and now you have so many techniques. If you're just sparring with somebody, or you're just practicing all your techniques, and they're just doing like a random attack to get you to see what you can pull out of your hat, then that's where we tend to get lost, because we forget all the fundamentals. All we want to do is pull off a technique which is often planned, like, oh, I want to do this one next, and then they realize they can't get into it, they can't find it because it wasn't relevant to the attack thrown, you know what I mean? But they had it in their mind and their idea, or they can't think of I'm guilty of all of this stuff, or they freeze because they're like, oh, well, you know what, man, I did this standing armbar like 4 times in a row, I did this wrist throw like 5 times in a row, I don't want to do that anymore. Yeah, but why were you doing it in the first place? Because that's what the situation gave you. It gave you the opportunity to do a technique that was relevant, so you took it, and that's what you should be doing every single time. Because in the end, I'm just throwing numbers out here, but I would say 95% of all the techniques and all the crap that we learn is all for fun, and they're good to teach you attributes that you can add to your to your skill sets. But a good judo practitioner, if you ever watched judo like competitions, I'm sure you have, you'll see the same 5 techniques over and over again. Seotosh, the Uchi-gari, stuff like that, just the little things, because those are the ones that work the most. Out of all the grappling stuff, there's the triangle choke, there's the armbar. Those are the ones that are most often hit from guard, as an example, but there's so many other things you can do, but those are the ones that always hit. So people want to learn all this stuff, but they don't realize they're never going to be able to get them off. They're not going to be able to use them as often as they think. It gives them options, but and that goes into what people's intentions are when they sign up for a dojo. Well, what do you want to do? You want to be able to defend yourself, or do you want to just be able to to build new attributes and new skill sets so that you can, you can pull something random out of your hat if you ever need it. God forbid you get attacked. And just be a better overall, a better person. Be able to move better. Be stronger. Be more strong-willed. Whatever your, the benefits out.
Yeah,
The benefits out.
I'm kind of a believer. You could probably say something that may beat these words, but almost every technique could be used in some weird, obscure situation to be effective, but it's just like varying levels of effective, like this one, like these are the techniques you're going to use all the time, and these ones are like in these very niche situations we might use these, and this is like a technique I might use like once in a whole tournament, just like as a wild card move that I just throw in there. But it's this balance between, okay, if you keep things really, really simple and you focus on the fundamentals, people will get very good very fast, but they will also quit really quickly. And
if they're bouncing in a corner all day.
Yeah, you have to entertain, right? And so you kind of need to mix a little bit of that in. And like you said, martial arts is this never-ending journey that you're going to do the rest of your life. Do you really want to do bounce in that corner every day for the rest of your life, or do you want to get out and maybe try to do a tornado roundhouse kick or a 720 spinning cross, just to have some fun along the way after you've been doing this for 20, 30 years or whatever, what I mean? I think it's a balance.
100%.
Sure.